Hey guys, it's Belle, and in this video we are going to be talking about one of my favorite medieval texts in the genre that I work in for my PhD research. It's extremely cool, and it is what is known as a prognostic, which means it is a text which helps us to identify something that's going to happen in the future. And yes, this is my favorite version of this in any given manuscript. It is from a Bodleian manuscript, which will be linked in the description of this video. And oh my god, guys, it's just so much fun. Like, you've literally got like a devil with horns holding a scroll. This is the kind of thing where, in a horror movie about witchcraft or whatever, they'll open some sort of magical codex and they'll see this like curse written on it and everyone will get really scared. But this is real. This is a real medieval manuscript that you can go and read in the Bodleian Library, and you can access it online. And today we're going to be talking about what the hell this means and how you can use it in your own personal witchcraft practices. So what is the Apuleian sphere of death? It is a prognostic which seems to have come into the Latin West from Greek sources, and some scholars think that it was originally transmitted in the 6th century, although the earliest manuscript attestations that we have of it come from the 9th century. And in England, I believe the earliest we have is the 10th century Common Era. But they're very popular prognostics, and they get transmitted very often with computistical texts, which is why I study them as part of my research. And fascinatingly, they identify whether or not a person is supposed to die from an illness or not. And this became extrapolated to other kinds of things. So you might calculate this sphere of life and death to figure out whether a negotiation you're about to go into is going to go well or badly, various other things that you might want to figure out from the future. So this text here, you may identify, those of you who are hot on your paleography, that this here says spera pulei platonici de vita de morte, and that is the text that we have here. So this manuscript has the prose explanation that normally accompanies it. There is also a verse, a short poem that goes along with this manuscript, and both of these texts work to give us a sense of how this actually works. And so this side here, funnily enough, shows the version of the Apuleian sphere which is attested in the manuscript I'm writing my PhD thesis on, which is MS Cotton Caligula A.XV, housed at the British Library. And you will hopefully understand by the end of this why these various Roman numerals are significant. So without further ado, I will read through these and we'll translate it and hopefully give you guys something that you can use in your own personal magical religious practices. And forgive me as usual if my Latin pronunciation is not the best, particularly my diction for poetry. So, collige per numeros quicquid cupis esse probandum, junge simul nomen ferviam lunamque die, collectamque una summum partire gennos, quodque superfuerit rotulus discernet uterac, quas retinet vitae nec non et mortis imago, si supra fuerit vivet morietur et infra. Sfera apulei platonici, de vita et morte, belle omnibus e grotis et quidquid inquirere volueris, sic computabis. Per omnes litteras et puta de nomine egri, audis lunam quod fuerit die quod cubuerit, et quotiens potuerit divide per triginta, et quicquid superfuerit reverses ad organiolum infrascriptum, et si superiori convenerit parti numerus vitalis erit, si inferiori parti convenerit mortiturus erit. Sic et de omnibus negotiis aut causis requireis. Si dies Dominicus fuerit, decimet 3, si lune decimet 8, si Martis decimet 5, si Mercurius triginta, si Jovis 11, si Veneris decimet 5, si Saturnus viginti atque 6. So, here we go with those are the texts. Now, what do they mean? We'll start with the poem because the poem is, first of all, it's fun for me that you got like a magical poem that goes along with this. And anyway, so collegiae per numeros quicquid cupis esse probandum. Collegiae gather per numeros through the numbers, quicquid cupis esse probandum. Whatever you wish to be tested or tried out. Now, what this is not a very obvious reference to, actually, and which the text itself explains, the prose text explains a bit better, is you add up people's names, so your name in particular. So you, in the Greco-Roman counting system, each letter of the alphabet actually has a numerical value. So A would be 1, B would be 2, etc., etc. And the Venerable Bede in the, I believe, first or second chapter of his treatise De Temporum Ratione, he talks about how you can use this system to have a crude kind of sign spelling system, because the Romans had hand signs which they used to communicate these different numbers. So, of course, if you spell out 1, 5, 10, whatever, with your hands, you can therefore spell the letters and communicate messages to other people silently as a form of sign language. This is distinct, bear in mind, from monastic sign language, which developed during the high medieval period, but we're not going to get into that just quite yet in this video. The point is, each of the letters of your name has a numerical value. So you add all of those up together, and that's the first figure that we need to work the sphere of life and death. So then, junge simul, nomen feriam lunamque Dei. So you join together the numerical figure for the nomen, your name, feriam, the day of the week, and again, this isn't directly stated, it's in the verse, it's the day of the week in which you got sick. So if you first notice your symptoms on a Thursday, that's the 4th day of the week, so you add a 4. Lunamque Die, and the moon of that day. So let's say you got sick during the full moon and it's a full lunar month, you would add on 31, because that's the sort of 31st day of the lunar month. Oh, that wouldn't be a full moon, sorry. The full moon would be the 15th. So you would add 15 if you got sick on the day of the full moon. Collectamque una summam partire trigenos. So, collectamque summam. So, the collected total. Collectamque summam. Una means, collected together. Partire trigenos. Divide it by 30. So you're adding up the number for your name, the day that you got sick, and the age of the moon on the day in which you got sick. Quodque superfuerit rotulus discerne tuterque. And whatever is remaining, the wheel will figure out on both sides, because there's a top part and a bottom part. Quas retinet vitae nec non et mortis imago. The image of life and death holds both of them, essentially. So both the those who are going to live and the moribund. Si suprafuerit vivet. If the remaining number, after you add up the total and divide it by 30, is in the top half, he will live. Morietur et infra. And if it's below, he will die. So that's what this is. So if you add up your total divided by 30 and the remainder is one of the numbers up here, then you will live. But if it's in one of the parts below, you will unfortunately die. And bear in mind quickly that within this sphere, this is actually giving you specific values for letters. So you can see here that A is 3, B is also 3, C is 20, etc. So this particular sphere is giving you its own values. Other ones you would just use the Greco-Roman numerical values of, A equals 1, B equals 2, and so on. And the numbers for life and death are actually on the outside here. So got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, that's 21, 23, 26, I think that's 29. So if it's any of those numbers, you'll survive. And then below here we have 5, we have 6, we have 8, we have 12, we have 25, we have 28, 29, and 30. And if you have any of those numbers, you will die. I think they've actually repeated 29, which is curious. That could be a scribal error, that they could have just missed off a number by accident. So there we go, and we've got some very mysterious Greek writing here. So this says Zoe Mikra, which is small life. Zoe Sotis, I think this is greater life. Zoe Megali, which is great. This is great life. Zoe Sotis. Not fully sure what this is, if I'm being honest. My Greek isn't that good yet, unfortunately. And the Latin letters across the top here. So what we have is a Latin transliteration of the Greek, which we have long here, and a translation. So it says here, Zoe Megale, id est in Latin vita longa, which is long life in Latin. Hypergera, which means super terra, above the earth. That's a curious one, actually. I'm not fully sure what this is. Oh, right, I can see. So this section here, which says above the earth, this is sort of a symbol, right? And it's a reference to the fact that if you're in the upper half, you're going to be among the numbers that are above the earth in heaven, in paradise. And down here, it will presumably say something like below the earth in hell, which is quite dramatic. And on the sides here, it's saying medietas, which is the middle. So there's actually no numbers here. So I think this is sort of the dividing line, and maybe that's why there are no numbers here. The dividing line, curiously enough, notice, is the cross. So they've fully Christianized this originally pagan, probably, sphere of life and death, which makes no reference in its original text to the Christian God. So literally the dividing line of life and death is Christ, and the way in which one figures out which side of that line they fall on, whether they are in the elect who will live and go on to heaven, or the moribund who will die and remain on earth, that the way that one figures that out is through computistical calculation, is by correctly observing the sun and the moon, and by adding up all of these numbers correctly. So this is in itself another example of the interplay between concepts of computistical calculation and personal soteriology and health in the early Middle Ages when this text was written and transmitted. Really fascinating stuff. There's so much that can be said about this diagram, but we must move on to the prose section. So, Sfera Pulei Platonici de Vita et Morte, this is just the title of it. So the sphere of Apuleius Platonicus, now this is just, they never really give an explanation of what this is. This is just like a sort of Greek-sounding name that to Latin people in the time, they'd be like, oh, that sounds intelligent, Apuleius Platonicus. He must have known what he was talking about. And some of these prognostics actually draw on the prestige of Greco-Roman authors, sometimes to the extent that you literally just don't need to say much else. So in one of the texts for the Egyptian days, it gives a fascinating little glimpse of empiricism. We often think of medieval people as rather dullards who never questioned anything and were rather credulous. But in this short text about the Egyptian days, it actually says that these days of the year are dangerous. You must never bloodlet on these days. And one Roman doctor was very clever. He tested it by drawing blood from his horse on that day, and the horse soon died. So this shows that they are, sometimes even testing out these things, or not taking these texts always at face value in the Middle Ages, but more importantly, they sort of just mention, oh, some Roman doctor, as a sort of vague gesture at somebody who is intelligent and is good at medicine. And likewise here, Apuleius Platonicus is not a real person, really, or it probably wouldn't have meant much of a real person to the medieval people using this. They would have just heard the name and be like, oh, that's Greek, that sounds fancy. And that's almost certainly why this Greek is included in the diagram as well. It's to make it seem like it's coming from the ancient classical world with all of this knowledge and received wisdom that medieval people are trying to glom onto and preserve as much of as they can. So we get the title of the text, the Apuleian Sphere, de vita et morte, of life and death, vel de omnibus egrotis, or concerning all sick people, et quicquid inquirere volueris, and whatever you wish to inquire about. Sic computabis, you will calculate it thus. Per omnes litteras et puta de nomine egri. So look through all of the letters. There's an implied, I think, specta or vide here. Et puta de nomine egri. And think about the name of the sick person. Adis lunam, add on the moon, and of course this is the number of the moon, you're not literally putting the moon in. Quota fuerit, die quad cubuerit, however much it shall have been on the day in which this person fell sick. Et quotiens potuerit, divide per triginta, and however much it can be done, divide that number by 30. Et quicquid superfluerit, reverteris ad organiolum, and whatever shall remain, revert to the sort of little organ, the little wheel here, infrascriptum, written below, because in my manuscript, this prose text and the verse actually comes just before this. So you have the text written above, and then you look down at the drawing to see whether you are going to live or die. Et si superiori convenerit parti numerus vitalis ervit, and if the number shall fit in the upper part, the superiori parti, which is this bit here, vitalis erit, it shall be a vital number, a number which signifies life. Si inferiori parti convenerit moriturus erit, and if it fits in the lower part, it is a moribund number. It is the number the person is going to die. Sic et de omnibus negotiis aut causis requires. So you can also use this to inquire requires de omnibus negotiis, concerning all negotiations aut causis, or matters. Si dies dominicus fuerit, decimet tres. So if it's a Sunday when the person gets sick, you add 13. Si lune, so if it's a Monday, because remember, medieval people started their week on a Sunday, much like the University of Oxford still does. Si lune, you add on 18. So if it's a Monday, you add 16 when they fell sick. Si martis, you add on 15. So if it's Tuesday, you add 15. If it's a Wednesday, you add on 30. If it's Thursday, you add on 11. Si veneris, decimet quinque. If it's Friday, you add on 15. And lastly, si Saturnus, you add on 61 to the total number before you divide it. So there you go. This is the text giving you its own sort of figures. So now with that and with the numerical key that we have here, you have all that you need to add up the sphere of life and death and figure out if you are going to die. Now, what I can say is that a friend of mine got COVID at the start of the pandemic, and I calculated this. I did the sphere of life and death for him. He was lucky to belong to the upper part of the sphere of life and death, and he did in fact survive. So who knows, maybe it works as a prognostic tool. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this little foray into medieval magic, and the TLDR for you to remember is add together the numerical score for your name, the day in which you fell sick, and the moon on the day that you fell sick, divided by 30, and see which part of the wheel your remainder belongs to. And one last quick thing is that this wheel, of course, echoes medieval themes of the rota fortunae, the wheel of fortune, which constantly turns and crushes souls beneath it. Really dramatic stuff. If you want me to teach you Latin so that you can read this amazing manuscript for yourself, or if you want me to teach you any of the other languages I do on this channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon, which will be linked in the description of this video. I also have a Discord server which you can join, where we sometimes do Latin learning language events and we do movie nights, and I usually post these glosses in my server before I turn them into videos, so you can get sort of early access there. And until next time, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye everyone!